Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Grace Lynch, and today I'm going to talk about the yes/no. Um, so one of the tools that I use that is very fundamental to making any kind of progress in the kinds of recovery that I grapple with is a tool that I call the yes/no. Um, and basically, it's a process. It's a process by which, and I use this myself, but when I offer it to others, by which I suggest the person, if they have, I back up a little bit. The context is a person finding that they have something to grapple with in their own experience, that they realize they want to do something about, but when they look at the resources available to them, they can't fathom how they might go about it. They can't find agency to actually solve the problem. This is a very difficult place to get to in the mind. At least I found it so, um, because one of the possible delusions is that if I have hope that I can find somebody else to solve the problem, then I've got a solution. I can be like, I want to deal with this thing in myself. And if I know somebody's got a tool for it or an app for it, then I've got some hope. As soon as I find that kind of get out of jail free card, I will stop living relative to the thing I'm struggling with as if it's an unsolvable problem. The difficulty with that is that I have had problems in my own life that no matter how much I wish to treat them as if they were solvable, the consequences of not having them solved continue to play a role in my life. And eventually, I had to tap the mat that my tool isn't working because maybe someday there will be a solution to the thing, but I have to be a person who's living in this moment right now. And so the demands and dynamics of my life required me to find agency, find a way to be with facing dynamics of my own life that I couldn't escape and I couldn't modify. Um, and I couldn't change. I could look at the thing and realize, and to wit, the three examples are the nature of my trauma, the body of trauma experiences, exploring the dimensions of my neurodiversity, and then re-exploring the particulars of my 12-step recovery once I was able to look at both how my relationship with recreational chemistry began inside an autistic experience and synesthetic, and then how my journey into 12-step recovery continued being framed from an autistic perspective in a world that didn't have any tools for that or community. So those three factors in my life continued to run my life ragged. They were running me like a pinball game. And so life required me to find a way to reckon with them, regardless of whether there was a pattern in the world to deal with them. And the medical professionals in my case agreed independently that there was no science for the intersection of my neurological conditions. So my form of neurodiversity, which my working model is the way I relate to myself and my own experience as it happens, is very different from the way I relate that experience, such as I can understand it, to the rest of the world. So, making peace with my neurodiversity, exploring my synesthesia, finding agency to name it and be at peace with it, processing differently than anybody around me, became something that was very important to making peace with my daily life, which I needed to do post brain rehab. Similarly, there was no help for my TBI because there was no neurologist that would take me on for the intersection of my TBI with the autism and the synesthesia. So I was sort of on my own navigating what my language system looked like, having lost language from an autistic perspective and then having had to rebuild my relationship with it without the help of professionals or community or mindset or anything but my own intuition and tendencies, doing the best I could to struggle along. And my 12-step recovery, as I got the names for these conditions, and I was finding my words for it, trying to be honest with the people around me in the 12-step communities. I was told at every corner, this is an outside issue, go find outside help. And then quickly, of course, finding there is no outside help. And so my sobriety required me to deal with this stuff, but existing 12-step thinking blocked me out of having a community around the recovery journey. the longer that I stayed clean and sober with the experiences, the more detail I got to know the experiences. It required me to be honest with myself about that. But the further it took me away from 12-step recovery community, which was the support of, that a person in recovery looks to in having a sober life. So the idea that was helpful for me was that I had remained physically sober, even if I could not understand how my sobriety was like somebody else's. And then I got the idea that I could I could look at things differently. I could look not at 12 steps for how I understood my situation and the solution, but instead look at the nature of addiction and how it applied to my overall problem, which was the feeling that I have something in my life that I need to reckon with or deal with or change, which I can face and at least be honest with myself about. I can give up trying to escape through my magical understanding mind which made me feel like I had a kind of control, right? It's a subtle kind of conceit, but I could name the problem, and then it was difficult, but with some discipline and self-reflection, I could finally face that I couldn't get out of the problem through any kind of machinations on my part. There was no 12-step program for the addiction. There was no medical help for the TBI or the autism. There was no community for any of this, and my life and there was no help for the TBI or for the PTSD because the nature of the trauma took place in part of it took place in a languageless space. There's no way to build a cognitive model for a place that doesn't have any words. At least I couldn't find any. And so it became I thought it was like admitting a kind of horrible defeat that I thought there would be no hope in. But it turned out to be the door to exploring my own self in a way that I never would have expected. For when I was able to admit, yes, this is the thing I want to work with in myself, and no, I can't do anything about it, and I stopped and I was able to be honest with myself about that, then that was a new place of mind for me. And when I stopped trying to wiggle around trying to control what I thought the problem was, and I stopped trying to finagle some control over the outside world to take care of my problem, then I started exploring being with the experience of having an unsolvable problem. And inside there, staying with the awareness of the yes, I need to solve this, and no, I don't have a way to do so. Inside that, when I stopped losing my shit about it, I got to realize that I'm currently not dead inside this situation. I would have thought that such a situation is impossible and would lead to certain death, and yet I realize I'm still breathing here. Everything is okay. I mean, I'm going along. I don't like it. It's not pleasant. It's not ego flattering. It doesn't tell me how I'm going to get back to life as I knew it. But the fact is, I'm physically alive currently. And so then, once I had my physical experience of continued existence, I looked at my mentality around having an unsolvable problem. And I quickly realized that I had bought into this psychology, that if I have a problem I have and I can't fix it and I can't escape it, I believed that it was a trauma, that it was something horrible, that it was the end of the world, that everything comes to a stop. And so that was an idea, that was a cognitive structure I had, and I had my physical experience and the cognitive structure. Since I was continuing to exist, that was giving me direct evidence that my cognitive structure that I had remained completely psychologically invested in for God knows how long was false. And once I looked at that and realized my understanding actually didn't fit my experience, then I began to be able to use the direct experience of my continued existence plus the yes and the no to leverage a new way of looking at and questioning my own context and being able to face that if I don't understand this situation properly, what is the case? And once I started looking at my experience inside what I thought were these unsolvable and unsurvivable things, I started asking myself what the case is rather than trying to float a context and remain in control. And as I started asking and exploring, my mind was opened to learning new things about myself and my own experience. So that's the yes and the no. It's a little tiny piece, and we'll build more another time. Have a nice day.